Hey, how are ya?
Hey, I think I'm doing pretty well. I just got off of work. It was a little bit of a frazzled day with lots of tasks and lots of emergencies and things happening. But I'm home now. And we've been doing our pre-recording chat and it's energized me and I'm ready to go. So how are you?
I'm doing great. We have been, as a family, stop me if I've said this to you before, but we have been playing this really fun game called The Road to El Dorado. Have you played this board game?
No, tell me more. I'm so excited.
Okay, so it's super fun. If you could possibly take Dominion and Candyland and put them together, that's this game.
Weird.
It's super cool. You basically have to get from point A to point B, like in Candyland. The board changes each time you play because it's like these chunks of board that you put together in different ways. But
Okay.
the deck building mechanic of Dominion is what actually allows you to move from square to square. And you have dozens and dozens and dozens of different route options that you can pick. And so there's a lot of freedom to kind of move however you want to move. You are essentially building an expedition party, is the kind of cards that you have. And so then you're playing the expedition party, and that's how you move. It's very clever. I really like it, and it has been a win with everybody in my family.
Wow. That sounds great. And it makes me
Yes,
doubly sad that we did not have our family vacation together this last summer
I
because
know.
we could have played that.
Yes, this is Kristen and I were just literally saying this last weekend that we super miss you guys. So we were thinking that.
Hmm. Yeah, same here. But I'm glad
Yeah.
we get to do this podcast. And I
Yes.
am really looking forward to today's conversation. But I have to tell you a funny story before we get started.
Ooh,
Uh,
I love a good funny story.
yeah. So, what I hope today's episode will be about is that I want to ask you everything that you've learned about listening as a coach, because you've been coaching now for a couple of years, a year and a half or so, and you've really been in coaching in earnest over the last few months. And I just want to like glean from you what I can about learning or about listening. So that was what I was hoping for. But prior
Hmm.
to recording, I stepped away and I knew we needed to get to recording. And so I didn't want to spend very long, but I hadn't seen my daughter and her boyfriend is here. And so I wanted to see him and say hi and let him know, hey, guys, I'm going to be recording if you could keep it down. And we ended up talking for quite some time. All the while, I knew we needed to get to recording. And I was so thankful that you told me, hey, no stress. I got something I got to do before we record anyway. Feel free to take your time. Because otherwise I would have like been itching to get out of that conversation and move on. And irony upon irony, what would I want to stop the conversation for? To go talk about listening.
Oh, man. I love that. What could be better than interrupting a conversation and saying, "Hey, I'm sorry. I don't entirely have time to listen to you right now because I just have to go record this podcast episode about listening." That's
Right.
that's as
Yeah.
good as it gets.
Yeah. So I'm,
Yes to that.
yeah. So thank you for freeing me up to actually listen so that I don't feel like a hypocrite coming into this episode.
That's awesome. Yes. No, I am really interested. I have sort of been leaking thoughts about listening to my wife and my kids and you and even on the podcast periodically, but especially since I started working for Lyra, they invest so deeply and passionately in training us to be good listeners. I'm actually very intrigued to think about this. and just to think about why listening matters and what I've picked up about listening in the, I don't know, bazillion and 6 hours of training that I've received, particularly in this job. That's a fascinating question.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to be sensitive to your role as a coach because I don't want you to just say, oh, well, yeah, I was talking to this client the other day and here's their whole life story. And let me tell you how I listened to that. Right. Like, obviously, you have some
Yes.
confidentiality here. And so, hopefully we won't dive too deep into any one story, or maybe you have a way of being able to talk about this that is not necessarily revealing somebody's story.
Yeah, I'm going to do the same thing in this conversation that I would have done when I was pastoring, which is I'm going to if I refer to a coaching story, I'm going to be taking that story apart at its building block level and then putting it back together with other stories so that I'm not actually representing any actual person. Because I'm going to be changing details. I'll give you enough to get the idea, but I do want to really deeply respect the privilege of my clients and their information. And so nothing I'm going to say is really a specific client's story. Does that make sense? Because that seems like
Yeah,
that's the best, safest way to do that to honor my clients.
100%. Yeah. And I'm so glad you are going to do that. I'm also glad that you mentioned your time as a pastor because, for newer audience members that may not know, you pastored for over 20 years. And so
Mhm.
listening is not new for you. You came into your life as a coach with lots and lots of really good listening skills. And I would have put you in the excellent listener category. And some of the things that you have said recently indicate to me that you feel you have gone from maybe good or whatever to much, much better than you were. And you've just grown exponentially recently. Am I representing your growth trajectory correctly?
It really feels that way to me. I suppose you'd have to ask clients and things like that. But I feel like the work that I've done, again, the amazing training that Lyra provides, which what we won't talk about today is kind of the principles behind all of what Lyra does that are kind of their unique special sauce. We're not going to talk about that. But even beyond that, they've really just taught us a lot about how to embody the value of listening in a conversation. And that is the stuff that for me, I thought I was good at it. And now I'm realizing, oh, there's a whole other level of good at this that I really have the privilege of growing into because this organization's interested in investing in me. And that's so much fun for me. It's fascinating to watch because we do not live in a world in which we get listened to very much.
Well, no, you're exactly right. In fact, my opening little irony story exemplifies why. We're always
Mm-hmm.
moving on to the next thing. How often do we intentionally set ourselves in a space where we're interruptible, where we legitimately have nowhere else to be other than there listening to this person right now? And like that we commit that type of energy and that kind of time to one individual. That just isn't how our society tends to function.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even I was thinking about my last session of the day today. So all of my coaching is telehealth. So I'm sitting in my office in my house, the same place I'm literally sitting right now as we record, with my laptop in front of me, a completely clean desk, a very tidy physical space around me because I'm very distractible and I don't want anything to distract me. I just want it to feel warm and comfortable. All of that. But the thing that struck me today, my last session of the day, I got a text that was a little bit emotionally complicated for me. And it made it harder for me to listen because it split my attention in half. And I was thinking after the fact, and when that happened, I actually took my phone and tossed it over on a chair and took my watch off because I have a watch that reports text. And I tossed that over on the chair, all outside of the view of my client. So my client never knew any of that was happening. But I was thinking how often, what percentage of our conversations we freely allow our technology to interrupt as if that was not harming the quality of our conversation.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. I'm on a peer support team at the 911 center where I work, and we occasionally get quarterly training. And one of those trainings was led by a therapist who happened to share with us a study where they showed that a mother and a nursing child's heartbeats would sync up while the mother was
Mm.
nursing. And okay, nothing revolutionary there. But what was fascinating is the second mom grabbed her phone, the heartbeats would be no longer in sync.
Oh, well, that is fascinating.
Doesn't that
And
just exemplify the way that our phones interrupt our connection with other people?
they really do. And we're so used to, I do so many things giving 75% of my attention. Like, honestly, when I watch TV with my wife at the end of the day, we're both scrolling through our phones half the time. And that's fine. It's the end of the
Sure.
day. We're just relaxing, perfectly reasonable and appropriate. Most of the time, we're watching a show like we're rewatching Psych right now. I've
Mm,
seen every episode of Psych. It's fine for me to be on my phone. Not that important. But man, we carry that over into real life, meaningful conversations. I've been in team building moments, I've been in staff meetings, I've been in classrooms, I've been in restaurants watching other people on dates where the phone is a part of the conversation. And I don't mean a part of the conversation. This is different for people who are a little younger than us. You go down to somebody who's 18 to 25, the phone may be part of the conversation because they're talking about a thing on the phone. That's not what I'm talking about. We're talking about when the phone is pulling the attention to something other than the content of the conversation.
yeah. Yeah. For sure. Well, okay. So I'm really excited to dive into what you have been learning specifically. I wonder if before we get there, you could just give us a brief overview for anybody that may not know. What is it that you do for Lyra? How do your clients come to be? What is your job exactly?
Oh, sure. So there's a word for this and I always forget what it is, but Lyra is a mental health company that contracts with employers in order to provide mental health services, coaching and counseling to their employees. So they go into some random company. I'm not going to mention any of them because some of them I'm allowed to mention, some of them I'm not. I always forget which ones are which. And so they go into a company, they make coaching and counseling available to the clients. They also do massive campaigning in the corporate culture in order to encourage the clients to utilize those resources. So they don't just make them passively available, they make them actively, engagingly available. And the idea is that clients who have better mental health are going to be better employees. So it is worth the company's investment into their employees because those employees will be better employees. My role, whenever somebody uses their Lyra benefit, they're asked some questions and they're sent into one of two directions. And it really depends on more or less their scores on an anxiety and depression scale. If the scores are particularly high, they are immediately sent to a therapist. Otherwise, they're started with a mental health coach. And what we work on with our clients is skills and practices that help clients to be mentally and emotionally more flexible so that they can deal with life's challenges.
Hmm.
And we use a variety of techniques, all of which are entirely research based. They're grounded in therapy traditions like ACT that are intentionally built on techniques that can actually be researched, things like mindfulness and things like that. And so that's what I work with my clients on. And I will work with a client somewhere between 1 and 8 sessions. We set a goal every single time we meet. We take a step towards that goal until we get there.
I think this is great. But I think on the surface, it sounds counterintuitive that a bulk of what you would do is listen, because I think it would be easy for somebody to listen to that description and hear, yeah, people come in with anxiety and depression. I have tools that they need to learn, and those tools help them not be so anxious or depressed. And then everybody goes away happy. So you become the role of quote unquote mental health professor or teacher that gives them the tools, guides them on how to use them, and then off they go. Where does listening fit in?
That's so interesting. Yeah, it is funny. I hadn't thought about the fact that it could sound that way, but it really could. Uh, I start off every single engagement with a client by saying to the client, I want you to know two things. Number one, I've known you for 10 minutes now. You've known you your whole life. I am not the expert on you, you are. The second thing I want you to know is that if advice could have helped you, I know and you know that you would have gone and listened to a podcast episode and not bothered with this because you would have solved your problem in 30 minutes and it would have been done. And every single client I say these things to nod vigorously at both.
Mm,
So I have a toolbox of skills and practices, but I am not just throwing those at the client. I am asking clients questions that helps them take a step back from what they're experiencing and see it in a new light. And I'm doing that not by saying it back to them. And maybe this is one of the first things that really I've learned more. I already knew this about listening, but that I've learned more than ever about listening. Every time you give advice or tell somebody a conclusion, you frequently rob them of the opportunity to come to that conclusion on their own.
yes. Yes, 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 and yes.
Yeah, and it's just not as powerful. It's just not as powerful as when like I had this happen. I've had this happen 100 times, but I had this happen just the other day. A client was talking and talking and said, well, I think this is going on and this is going on, and I heard a piece of it and I said, hey, it sounds to me like what you're saying is this is what's going on, and I quoted almost verbatim to them two things that they had said. And they looked at me and they thought for a second, and they said, I think you're right. I think that is what's happening. And I said, no, hold on. I'm not telling you that's what's happening. You just said that to me. And they were like, oh. And when they heard their own words, not shoved back in their face, but just offered back to them as a gift, hey, this is
Yeah.
what I'm hearing you say. It resonated profoundly because it was literally the inertia of their own thoughts was bringing them into that direction, and they were ready for the realization. They just needed to tip over the edge. Whereas so often I feel like we're trying to somebody's 50 feet away from the edge that we want them to get over, and we're shoving them, and you're not going to get somebody over the edge from 50 feet. You just get them to fall on the ground.
Yeah, I actually found this to be true when you repeated my words back to me a number of months ago. And it was fascinating when you repeated my words back to me. It's not that it changed how I felt about the situation. It made me realize the way I was describing the situation was not accurate to how I felt about the situation. You 100% heard what I said. And when I heard it back to me, I went, yes, you got it right. And I've got it wrong. I'm saying the wrong thing. Let me rephrase what it is I actually intend to communicate. And it was amazing how helpful it was to actually change course just because I heard my own words come back to me.
Such a good point. It's one of the things, again, one of the things I've been picking up about being a good listener is letting go of being in control. And this is one of those things for me. I want to be right when I'm helping somebody. I feel like I'm supposed to be the one who's got it all under control. I feel like I'm supposed to have the solution and that there's pressure on me to figure it out and get it right. And so I want to repeat back the things that are the right things. And one of the things I've realized, and this is such a good example of this, is frankly, it doesn't matter. If I repeat back something that is I say it right, but it's not the thing that matters, the other person just says, no, that's not actually the thing. That's not important. That's what I said, but it doesn't matter. That's not good. If I use these listening skills correctly, even when I'm wrong, it helps the client. This is the thing that's
Yeah.
crazy to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is not about my wisdom. It is about my listening.
And that's the fascinating thing. And that's where I actually find your dual experience to be fascinating, because you spent 20 plus years as a pastor listening and giving pastoral counsel. Sometimes that meant listening. Sometimes that meant giving a spiritual answer. And I think, that pressure you talked about to be right or to give advice or to be the expert is doubly so when you are a pastor in charge of somebody's spiritual condition, if you will, or has some influence on somebody's spiritual condition. And so tell me what it's been like to let go of one role and adopt another and really sit in this in between. Because for instance, I imagine you deal with some morally questionable things that we as Christians would be like, oh no, we need to fix that, right? Maybe a client is debating whether or not they want to leave their church because they disagree with their pastor over something. And in fact, they might not even want to participate in Christianity anymore. And so maybe this is what they want to talk about in coaching. Obviously, as a pastor, you have a particular answer to that. And then as a coach, you come in as a neutral party. How does that work?
This is so interesting. I've had so many examples of this. Some are situations that I have sat with different people, but in analogous situations, both as a pastor and then as a coach. So, for example, I have sat with people struggling with whether or not to get an abortion as a pastor and as a coach. Sometimes it's just kind of these similar situations. I have been a coach for a number of people who knew I was a Christian, knew I was a former pastor. They had expressed their own commitment to Jesus and were doing something that was inconsistent with that commitment. Sleeping with a significant other, not going to church on any level, whatever it was. And all of these situations raise this exact question that you're bringing up of, is there a difference in the two roles? And what is the function of those two differences? Which I
Yeah.
think is fascinating. As a pastor, and I'm going to say what I did, past tense. I am not a pastor now. I am curious if I ever pastor again, how I will understand that role and what it will mean to work with people in that role. But as a pastor, when I was pastoring, I felt like it was my responsibility to give advice. And this is for two very significant reasons. Number one, I would not sit down and pastorally counsel someone who wasn't in my church. So if you went to some church down the road and wanted to meet with me, I would have said, no, go meet with your own pastor. Because we here at this church, we're all part of a community. Therefore, in a general sense, there are some general community things that we all affirm. And therefore, if you are choosing to be part of this community and sitting down with me as one of the pastors in this community, whether you ask me or not, I am invited to speak into situations in which you are inconsistent with the way we as a community are following Jesus.
Yeah.
That's just, I think, what it means to be a pastor. Now, what that meant for me in practical terms, there were two things that I now wonder exactly how I would do. One is what I guess I would call the order of operations. One of the things that happens when a pastor sits down with somebody in the church is the meeting may be about one thing that needs to be addressed, but the pastor is seeing 27 things that need to be addressed and just picking the one that needs to be addressed right now. That is a lot of me doing the choosing.
Mm.
And I'm not sure what this would look like, but I'm very curious what it would look like for it to be me, the spirit, and the other person as a kind of trio trying to discern what the next thing needed to be that needed to be addressed. So
Mm.
that's one thing, because in coaching, like I could think 57 things and I'm not going to tell you what you need to work on. Not on like and it's interesting when I was pastoring and a therapist or something would say that, they would I assumed that they were just saying that but they didn't mean it. Now that I'm doing this kind of work, I genuinely mean it. Like I am not going to tell you. I had a client today ask me. He is making a decision that I have, and this has happened a dozen times. He is making a decision that I have very strong moral opinions about. And he said, "Hey, what do you think I should do in this situation?" And I said, "Honestly, it doesn't matter what I think. What we need to do is clarify what your values are and what you think. And then what does it look like for you to be consistent with your values? Because at the end of the day, I'm going to hit end on this call and I don't even live in the same state as you. Who cares what I think?"
Well, I mean, I get that from the perspective of your role, but our audience, we're largely a Christian audience. Like there's very few non-Christians that listen to our show. And so what would you say to the average Joe in the pew about listening? And if somebody presents a moral issue like that to them, would you ask them to consider not answering right away or not?
It's a great question. So this comes down to several things. Number one, far more than I've ever realized, I am coming to see how often we ask people to hurry up and get on the same page as us because we are unwilling to deal with the emotions that the conflict brings up in us.
Yes.
I'm sorry. It is not about Jesus. It is not about doing the right thing. It is not about morality. It is about the fact that it is uncomfortable that two Christians might end up thinking something different. It's about the fact that it is uncomfortable to think about somebody that you potentially respect making a decision you don't respect. It is about how uncomfortable the gray area is for you as a listener and for me as a listener. You know, this happened just the other day. I was in a conversation with someone and they're considering an abortion. And that's a complicated topic. And this particular person was not approaching it blithely by any means, but there are some legitimately complicated things going on both sides of this. Like, this is going to really profoundly impact her life in a way that many of us can't even imagine. And I found myself asking, a question that I felt like I would get in trouble for, which was, so how would your life be better if you did get it? And this person sat and thought about it for a week and came back with some answers, and it led to a really good conversation. And it was a really powerful moment. But one of the things that was interesting to me is that they needed space to genuinely think and process for themselves. And what was, I could feel my own anxiety about the conversation, my own fear that they would make the wrong decision, my own discomfort with potentially somehow being culpable in their wrong decision.
Hmm.
And I could feel all of that stress sitting with me. And one of the things that, one of the principles that I'm really trying to practice in this work now is, if something makes you anxious or uncomfortable, maybe that's a sign to lean in. So, oh man, I don't want to talk about that. Oh, maybe that's exactly the thing I should talk about.
Hmm.
And I don't mean talk about like I should tell you what to think. I just mean genuinely ask open questions like, oh,
Yeah. I can imagine being in your shoes. Like, you would not, as a pastor, you probably would never have asked an individual, well, what would it look like if you, like, what would be the pros of actually going through with that abortion? Like, I don't know that you would ask that. And so I can imagine your discomfort with feeling like that's the question you should ask in your present role. And then having
mhm.
to force yourself to say, well, if I feel discomfort here, it's probably where I need to go.
Yeah, it really is. And what's interesting to me is more and more my model for this is the very gentle work that the Holy Spirit does all the time with us. I actually say to my clients, hey, I just want you to know I'm here to come alongside of you in this particular moment in your journey. They have
Which,
no idea that I'm making a Bible reference.
yeah, that come alongside. I mean, that's the paraclete, the come alongside one.
You bet it is. Because what's fascinating to me is the Paraclete, the Holy Spirit, comforter, who's here to, like, sin and judgment and conviction and comfort and all those things in John 14 through 16, right? Like, is so willing to take a back seat to my own decision making. I mean, when was the last time the Holy Spirit forced an issue with you? I mean, really?
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. It's always those gentle nudges. It's always that gentle invitation. It's space to process. In fact, I feel like I have made better choices and become more Christ-like simply by becoming more honest in prayer and being willing to actually wrestle with things with God, with the Holy Spirit. It's amazing
Yeah.
that that is the action that leads to better decision making, not like just being forced into a good decision.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. And what's interesting to me is I've watched, one of the things we get to do is watch some of the senior coaches have been recorded doing coaching sessions, and the client in the session has signed off on allowing it to be used for training purposes.
Hmm.
So certain sessions are available for us to watch some of the senior coaches do their work. And one of the sessions, I have never been so uncomfortable in my life watching a show or something recorded. One of the coaches, he slipped and said something that was inappropriate and clearly offensive to the client. His response was to pause, to ask the client, hey, I just said this and I'm so sorry that I said it, but I just want to hear, how did it make you feel that I said that? And the client kind of stumbled through an answer and whatever. And then the client kind of said, that's how I felt, and kind of wrapped up what he was saying. And so then the coach said, man, thank you for being willing to share that. I feel really embarrassed that I said that. but I just want to make sure, is there anything else that you feel about me saying that? And the client like shared some more and wrapped up. And the coach said, man, thank you again. I cannot tell you how embarrassed. Is there anything you'd like to share about the fact that we're having this conversation right now? He must have come back to it 5 times.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And I was so uncomfortable. And then he did nothing to fix it at the end. Nothing. He apologized and he said, hey, you can sit with this, and you might, after sitting with this for a couple of days, want to have another session with me and keep working with me as your coach. You might sit with this for a couple of days and want a completely different coach. You might sit with this for a couple of days and just be angry at the whole company and just be offended and never want to be coached again. You are completely in the driver's seat. I'm going to let you stay in the driver's seat, and you let me know what you want to do.
Wow.
And that was the end of the session. It was so uncomfortable.
Oh
But
my gosh.
it was leaning into the discomfort and empowering the other person. And I think we tend to not use that as our conversational model. We tend to want to minimize discomfort and to take control rather than practicing the twofold habit of leaning into discomfort and surrendering control.
Man, how wildly uncomfortable. So let me ask you from your perspective, if you're doing this coaching multiple times a day and you were leaning into discomfort and you were surrendering control and just firmly placing the client in control, saying, you're the expert on you. I want you to make the decisions. I want you to decide what we're working on. I want you to decide on the pathway for working on it. Like if you're really taking that step, and that's an uncomfortable place to be at times, what do you do with your own discomfort? Where does that go?
I am not great at this. I'm told that you get better at it over time. But one of the things my particular company emphasizes this particular question over and over and over again. So we do 45-minute sessions once every hour. So you have 15-minute breaks. You can use that for paperwork, or you can just like go sit in a chair and read a book if you need to, whatever you need to do. I have found that for me, there are certain things I've realized. Number one, I don't like having more than 2 clients in a row. 3 clients in a row is tough. So my ideal schedule is 2 clients on, an hour off. So I get up early. I have in my normal day, I get up pretty early. I have 2 clients. To be honest, I wear black t-shirts 100% of the time. So I throw on a black t-shirt and I still have my pajama pants on. But they have no idea. I do 2 clients, then I go have breakfast and shower, and then I come back and I do 2 more clients, and then I have lunch, and then I do 2 more clients. Like that's my preferred rhythm for this exact reason, is that I need some decompression space. I've also found that having a more contemplative prayer practice is really important for me. I've also found that intentional mindfulness is really important to me. I've also just this last couple of days, one of the things I've realized is like when I'm having lunch, I can't be like watching a show or something. Like I can't have more sound. I need to like sit and read a book
Mm,
because I've also learned that at least for me, like 7 sessions in a day is too many. I'm
mm.
tanked when I have 7 sessions. As a matter of fact, we were going to record last night. And I told you, I was like, hey, I have 7 sessions today. It was a giant mistake. I can't do it. Like we need to do it the next day because I can't record a podcast episode after having 7 sessions. It takes so much work for me to be
Yeah.
this intentionally listening well, trying to connect it to to meaningful principles and practices, being aware of what's going on in myself, like being 100% present in the moment. It just, those are, I don't know, those are some of the things I've had to work on. I'm sure every person is uniquely different, but I'm grateful to work for a company that says, hey, you need to manage yourself. And whatever you need to do to manage yourself, do that. That's important.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, can I just do a quick shout out and say, I think that any pastors that have a staff probably should be saying that more passionately than they do.
Oh, that's a good point. Well, let me try to wrap this up here. We're coming to the end of our episode, and I want to make sure that our audience members have something to put in their back pocket and take with them. And if I've heard you right, I think you have two pieces of advice thus far. I'm kind of wondering if there's a third lurking out there. So one, I heard the twin statements that are kind of one thing. I'm not the expert, you are. And every time you give advice, you rob them of the chance to make their own good decision. So that's kind of one idea there in my mind. And then I heard in this latter part here, this second bit of advice, do something productive with your anxiety. Like being a good listener is going to produce that anxiety. And rather than relieve yourself of that by giving advice or just trying to solve the problem or what have you, you need to have another outlet for that. And you need to develop what that is going to be. And so did I hear those two correctly? And then also, is there a third bit of advice you'd also give about good listening?
Yeah, I think those two, I would describe them as practice letting the other person be in the driver's seat of the conversation. Practice paying attention to yourself and what is coming up in you as a result of the conversation and what you need to do to take care of yourself, because only your best self is a good listener. And then the third piece that I would say is, and I mentioned this somewhere in the middle there, was note topics that make you uncomfortable in conversation and lean into having more conversation about those things. Lean into the discomfort.
Boy, that's really good. And I think these are great pieces of advice, both as a means to be a better listener, but also a means of setting about the journey of becoming a better listener, right? Like if you're genuinely leaning into these, one, you're going to be a better listener just by doing them. And then it's going to give you so many more opportunities to develop those skills as you continue to lean into them.
Man, and it's funny. I think listening is one of those things that as soon as you realize you've gotten to 4.5 out of 5 stars as a listener, you suddenly realize that there's actually 10 stars in the scale.
Yeah.
And so then you like work your way up to 9.5 stars and you suddenly realize, oh, this is a 20-point scale. Okay. Cool. And I think that just keeps going. And so the biggest danger is the folks who think they've mastered listening and are like patting themselves on the back.
That's so good. Well, I want to turn to the audience and just invite you into this conversation. What have you thought about this journey of listening? What do you think about the task of listening and dealing with our own anxiety? And what if the issue has a moral component to it? What did you think of all of this? And let us know. You can find us on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Threads. And you can also email us at onthephonewithjosh@gmail.com. We love hearing from you.
Yeah, absolutely. We are listening.
Okay, Fraser. All right. Well, shall we give something to be listened to again next week?
Yeah, let's do it. I can't wait. It's going to be a good time.
All right. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.
All right. Talk to you then. Bye.